This week on the Orange Box podcast, we talk about new features coming to Steam, yet another potential PlayStation 3 game getting a remake, Miyazaki defending Elden Ring's difficulty, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that beautiful Bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 38. I am your host, the man who is currently running Naruto style across a vast desert with his long blue hair flowing in the wind, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man who is currently fighting a former member of NSYNC with a giant key, Justin, better known as I Am Zaracon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
Not bad. It's work has we've got this new thing now that we're, or I guess a new system that we're transitioning into from the one we're currently using, and it's got a lot of stuff that we have to adjust to. But I mean, we'll I guess we'll deal with it. It's just that it seems like there's a lot of complications as far as it makes things more complicated than they need to be, but I understand why we're transitioning, just because for record tracking, it's better if we do it that way. But a lot of my team isn't really fond of it, but we'll see how it goes there. But actually earlier this week though, I had something come in the mail which I saw that was on sale, which was it's called the Nitro deck, and it's essentially I guess something peripheral for your Nintendo Switch for playing handheld mode. And I got this for two reasons. One, it seems like it would be more comfortable to play because it's a little thicker as far as like the thickness of it, and it would be easier to hold in playing it in handheld mode. But also it has Hall effects joysticks, which is great. So that way, which is also the other reason why, because my joysticks have drift issues. So I bought this to combat that. And overall, I actually would say that it's pretty good. I think that a lot of the issues that I would have had before with playing in handheld mode are alleviated. But the only problem I actually have, though, is the fact that it suffers from the same problem that the joysticks have. And that's the fact of the placement of the right joystick and the D-pad, because it just doesn't feel right, as opposed to if you're playing on a Steam Deck, where the right stick is up higher and it's easier to shift between them, or even if you're playing with a Switch Pro controller or Xbox controller, any other controller, it's just like having the right thumbstick be directly beneath the face buttons is very inconvenient. And if you're playing games that actually require it, then it makes it even more difficult to play with. So I'm not a fan of that aspect, but I'm hoping that, the second Switch model, or Switch 2, uses Hall effect sticks. That would be great to help get rid of the problems with drifting. But I also hope that the placement would be better for the sticks. That way it's not really cramping your hand when you're trying to like shift over just so you can move your camera around or something like that. But overall though, I do like it. I do think it's pretty good.
Now, did you get the one that also acts as a dock, or just the one on its own?
Now that's the funny thing. I saw that. Well, I don't think you can use this as a dock. I mean, I see it says like output, but based on what I saw on the box, I haven't gone through the manual completely. It seemed like it was saying you could use this as a controller, but I'll look and actually see if you can use it as a dock, because if you can, that would be pretty cool. So I
know that there's a newer model. I'm not actually sure if it's out yet that can also act as a dock, because I've seen some YouTubers review it, but I don't know for sure if that's the case with all of them.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out. And I mean, I'll
whether you have
check that out later on, because it does have an output. Yeah, I'll definitely do that.
Cool. Yeah, let's see here. My week, trying to think of what's happened. It's been a bit busier. I did, still get a good amount of relaxation time over the weekend, but I also decided that I wanted to start doing like individual, taking each of my kids individually out for, just to spend time with me one-on-one, because I don't get a whole lot of that. So I took my daughter out for a daddy-daughter date, and then I took each of my boys out, for individual things as well. And so that was fun. Yeah, it was good stuff. We, went, like, I took my daughter out for lunch on Saturday, and then we did a couple of things after that. Then I took my middle son out for dinner, and we did a couple of things after that. Then I took my oldest for lunch on Sunday, and we did a couple things after that. So it was all just good stuff, and good to get some time with my kids and all of that. Finally started working on editing the first of my comparisons that's going up next week. So that one's more involved. It's definitely going to be like I'm a good chunk of the way through the main video editing portion of it, but I'm still not quite done with it. I didn't get a chance to work on it today, but I did work on it the past couple afternoons, and hopefully I'll get that done. Well, I have to get it done sooner rather than later, but I'm hoping to maybe have it done before I have to worry about I just don't want to be doing it last minute. I don't want to wait till just Sunday to get it finished. So I'm hoping that since I've done most of the work already, or at least the bulk of the part that takes the longest, that I'll be able to finish it up in the next few evenings. I know tomorrow I'm probably not going to have any time to work on it because I have to do the podcast, get that all edited, and then Friday, if I have time after I mow the lawn, I might, because usually Fridays we'll do, I work till 4, then we have dinner. It's, pizza night, so I'll typically be making it, and then I'll mow the lawn, and then after I mow the lawn, I'll relax until it's time for the kids to go to bed, and then my wife and I hang out and watch a movie. Or TV show, depending on what it is that we're doing. But I don't know if I'll have any time on Friday to work on editing that video. So it might be something that I'm honestly kind of considering just making Sunday my rest day this week, and then having Saturday be my day that I work on stuff, because like editing whatever cooking video I do next, that doesn't take nearly as long. But it's just because of the gameplay, especially when the gameplay is over an hour long, and then there's lots of sections where I'm pausing so that I can get them matched up as close as possible, so you can get a good idea of how they compare. Anyway. So there's that, and I finally got footage for both of the Dads and Gaming interviews I did, at least game footage for the games that they talk about. So I'm hoping to get the first one up next Friday. I think I want to design a proper logo for it, though, for the rest of them going forward, just to make it stand out a little better, because before I was just using like some font that I liked that worked well, but I want to design an actual logo, maybe redo the cover or the thumbnails for all the previous ones with a new logo and all that. Just kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I not optimize, but just do something to basically make them stand out a little bit better, because the way that the logos and the text worked out, it just wasn't the best with the layout, and so I just kind of want to redesign the thing to make it work a little bit better. So I'll figure all that out. Not really that important, but it's just one of those things. At least with editing those, though, I know that editing them is not difficult because it's basically going to be about as complicated as it is editing the podcast. The only difference is I'm going to have to add on some video footage of games that they talk about, but that's a super simple thing to do, as you know. It's just putting it as a layer above, for however long I do it, and it's not going to be for the entire interviews, so there'll be that. But yeah, I feel like there's something else, but most of my stuff is just related to the games I've been playing. So why don't you start off by telling me what you've been playing this past week?
All right, so I am a man of my word. I went and played Metroid Zero Mission, and wow, is this game still good? Yeah, so I pretty much got through all of the initial portion of the game, so like right up until Mother Brain, and I stopped right around shortly after that point. Actually, as soon as I got to the first save room, I stopped playing, but as I've been constantly saying, good game, great stuff. Yeah, just solid game. But on that note, and this is actually something that I was testing the Nitro deck with, I played some Metroid Prime Remastered. And actually, I remember that I had already gotten the Gravity Suit, but I honestly did not remember the fact that shortly after you get it, you go directly to the Phazon Mines. So that's actually where I'm at now. And I'm already facing the wave beam troopers and stuff like that, and so getting all these new stuff. And I walked past the Omega Pirate, so I'm like waiting. As soon as I get the I think you get the power bomb, and then you crack the shell around him, and then that's when you actually have the boss fight with him. So like walk past him like, yeah, I'm gonna be ready for you soon enough, buddy. Yeah. But it's still just a blast going through, and then once I'm done with that, I'll probably go ahead. I mean, I'm gonna just try and wait and see. I'm hoping that Nintendo still comes out and just surprises us with Prime 2 Remastered and Prime 3 Remastered, because I don't necessarily want to start Prime 2 and then they drop Prime 2 Remastered. I'm like, I had already started playing this and gotten far into it, so
right.
I might wait and hold off slightly before I play 2 and 3 before 4 comes out.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing there. One game actually which I didn't have recorded, but this is actually something I meant to bring up last week, and this actually goes back to the Summer Games Fest. There was a game I'd seen called Fallen Aces, which is pretty much a graphic novel style first-person shooter, which is set in like 1920s, 1930s. You're playing as like a mobster, underling and stuff like that, and it seemed very interesting. And so the game is out on an early access, and actually if you get it now, you pay a cheaper price than when the full version comes out, because if you buy it now, you get all the future content as well. So I went ahead and did that for that reason. Unfortunately, it does not work well on the Steam Deck as of yet, because I was playing some of it on there, and it starts the cutscenes and you can get into the game, but once you actually, at least for me, once this game started loading, then the game completely crashes. So that is unfortunate there. The devs have said that they are going to try to work on making it, improving the performance on the Switch, so that's
Steam
something
Deck
to look forward to. But yeah. And so a friend of mine who had been playing Kingdom Hearts, he had beat Kingdom Hearts HD. He went back and he finished the game, and he said that he was going to go through the different Olympus Coliseum boss fights and all the different stages and stuff, and then he eventually got to Sephiroth. And I thought about it. I was like, it's been a long time since I played Sephiroth, so I went back to my old save file and I was playing it, and I realized his reach is just ridiculous. And that's really what I think made the boss fight partially difficult, is just the fact that he reaches so far that you have to either perfect parry or you have to just like block early, because he just hits so fast. And I mean, it's not the problem, I think, if you use Eroga for defense or if you just have a high enough level. But it's just so annoying. And then he's just constantly using his AoE effects. And I'm just like, ugh, let me just hit you already. But yeah, I definitely was not doing well at this, as you most likely can see. But I mean, he's not... His patterns are understandable, but it's just the fact that he's got a long range. Because if you could get in closer to him, especially since if you have Ultima, which was I was using Ultima weapon, that's a pretty long Keyblade, so that works very well for reaching him, but it's just something there. And I mean, I even forgot that this version, I thought this was something that was only in Kingdom Hearts 2, but I forgot that Kingdom Hearts 1 has Heartless Angel, so if you don't knock him out of his attack, your HP is down to 1, and your MP is completely gone, so you can't heal at all, so you need a potion. And yeah, that was not fun at all, but yeah. So that's what I've been playing this past week.
I remember fighting him in Kingdom Hearts 1. I never beat him on there. I beat him on 2. But on 1, the trick that I learned with Heartless Angel was right as he's getting ready to cast it, you use an elixir or something, and then as it'll fall right after the effect hits you, so that way when he hits you immediately after, you don't die. Because otherwise, you're 1 HP, and so it's completely worthless. But if I ever actually go back to play Kingdom Hearts 1, which it's like I want to, but I just don't want to go down that rabbit hole because there's so many freaking games in that series, and they're all pretty long. I mean, I feel like it might be possible to speed through it if I put it on easy, because like when I played it originally, I did play it on easy, but I struggled with a lot of it, mostly just because I wasn't very good at the game. And since Birth by Sleep, I've been playing only on Proud mode, just because it's like you get more cutscenes and everything. I mean, you get like the bonus cutscenes, and if you beat the game on Proud or Critical, you always get the best. I mean, you all get all the full endings, and of course, usually you have to like 100% and stuff as well to get that. But anyway, so yeah, but yeah, that is of course what I was referencing, because the original voice actor for Sephiroth was Lance Bass, who used to be a member of NSYNC, which was the weirdest thing at the time. I mean, he hardly says anything, so it's not that big of a deal. It was before the George Newbern phase when they replaced Sephiroth's voice actor, and he was perfect in that role. I can't remember who's doing Sephiroth now. I don't think it's George Newbern anymore, but he did such an amazing job as Sephiroth. And I mean, the guy they have currently, whether it's George Newbern or someone else, is also perfect. Same with Cloud. His original voice actor was really, really good, which, came up in Kingdom Hearts 1 and stayed up for quite a while. But I can't remember. I'm almost positive that they changed his voice actor for Remake. But he's still excellent. He fits the role perfectly. So anyway. Well, as for what I've been playing, I did play a bunch of Shin Megami Tensei 5. I did primarily on the Steam Deck over the weekend. The footage that I'm going to be showing here is actually just from playing it on PC. Mostly because while I do have some Steam Deck footage, the Steam Deck footage is all from like the first hour of the game. And that is just when I was recording for the comparison. But this is footage from where I currently am that I just recorded this evening. And, well, I want to say, first of all, with the PC version, of course, I had mentioned before that you can get really high frame rates, but I was getting screen tearing last week, and I decided this evening just turn off the frame cap again and just have, have VSync on, and that seemed to work just fine. Like I wasn't really noticing any screen tearing. I think there might have been like 1 or 2 spots where it did, but otherwise it wasn't, and just locked 240 frames per second the whole time. So that was pretty fantastic. But yeah, I'm absolutely loving this game. It's just like everything I loved about it originally is still there. And there's some new content that's keeping me interested as well. Some new areas to explore, some new ways to get around in some places. Yeah, it's fantastic. And of course, on the Steam Deck, it performs beautifully. You can only really get 60 frames per second on it, because the Steam Deck is not so much more powerful to where you can get a consistent 90. But 60 is perfectly fine for this game. I mean, it's still way better than the 30 target that you get on Switch. That being said, I don't feel like there is... I mean, this is not a game where you need the higher frame rate by any stretch. It just feels better, of course. I mean, feels better, animations are smoother, everything about it is much smoother, but it's really obvious that they really just took the Switch version and they ported it over without doing a whole lot to visually improve it, because they didn't really need to do much. I mean, the Switch version already looked really good. Basically, they just made it so that if you have it powerful enough hardware, it doesn't have to drop resolution at all. And so it just maintains the resolution, doesn't have the pop-in as much as the Switch version does. Or rather, the Switch version has pop-in on Steam Deck, and on PC I did not notice any at all. And yet still get, a really stable frame rate and looks really, really good, and it's just fantastic. I love the exploration of this game more than anything else, and the combat is great, the music is amazing. It's just like, this is a top-tier JRPG, in my opinion, and the fact, from what everyone's been saying, the issues that most people had with the original game, particularly in terms of story and everything, have been fixed because of all the stuff they added for this. Because basically you have 2 full story campaigns, completely separate paths. And yes, I mean, to be fair, a lot of the environments that you traverse, especially early on, are identical to what you do in the original game. So far, I haven't come across any new environments, just like some new features in terms of like ways that you can get around, for example, and a few new demons, that sort of thing. There's like a new character that I've come across that haven't really gotten anything with her story-wise, other than like a single boss fight that was that's clearly part of the new story. So anyway, I mean, it's a fantastic game. I wanted to just keep playing this and basically nothing else, but I did play like probably between Friday and Saturday I played 5 or 6 hours, and that's probably about it. I mean, I played a tiny bit this evening just to record some more gameplay, but that was really all I did with it from that standpoint. But yeah, really, really excellent, regardless of which version you get. So, the big thing I played, though, was Ghost of Tsushima, which the footage that I'm showing here has no spoilers whatsoever in it, because I beat the game. So I beat Khotun Khan and did basically all of the side quests with the exception of some of the collectibles. I think all I have left right now is tracking down the remaining Sashimono banners, and that's basically what I'm just working on when I play it. So my intention right now is I'm going to track down the rest of those so that I have every single one. Then I'll have all collectibles that are available in the game, most of which are completely optional to get, because like with the achievements / trophies that you get, like the artifacts and banners and stuff, most of them you only have to get like 20 total in order to get the achievement / trophy. And So the rest of the ones that you find are completely optional. It's just if you want to do it. But I want to do it. And then when I do that, once I finish getting all those, I'm probably going to try to do a quick New Game Plus and basically just play it on easy and breeze through the game. Because although I do want to eventually play it on lethal, I don't want to take the time to do that right now because I know that it will be a struggle, even if I mainline it. And when I do New Game Plus, I'm just mainlining it. I'm not doing any of the side stuff. One thing that is cool that I didn't know about, I don't remember if this was in the original version of the game, but once you have beaten the entire campaign, you actually can replay any of the camps, any of the missions, any of the like duels. You can redo any of those things. You just go to where it is on the map, and then you can press a button to replay it. I don't remember what button you press, but you have the option to do that. So, I mean, I haven't done it because I don't really need to, but I think it's cool that you have the option because, like, if I wanted to, for example, record footage of one of the duels, one of those Straw Hat duels, or if I wanted to put myself through the torture of facing what's-her-face again, the boss of the Iki Island DLC, I could do that if I really want to. And I really could, if I wanted to, go into that fight, put it on lethal just for giggles. Or not lethal, I'm sorry. Put it on easy just for giggles so that I can, beat her very easily. Because there's really no point in doing lethal until I'm ready to actually do the full game on lethal. Because basically the way I see it is that whenever I'm ready to try and do a lethal playthrough, I'm going to do probably the entire game that way. Because that would be the next time I play through. And of course it would be on New Game Plus, so I'd have all the gear, have all the abilities unlocked, all that. But yeah. Oh, one thing I do want to note, not that this will probably make a difference for you anytime soon, but if you do absolutely all the quests, well, you can very easily end up in the end of the game with one extra technique point that you can't use. That is just basically because I think it had something to do specifically with the director's cut, that if you got the director's cut, then by default they give you one technique point to start with. And so then you basically just get a free technique point that you can use however you want. And then from there, whether or not you, max out your character just depends on what you decide to do in the game, which, of course, I did everything. So I have one extra technique point, which bugs me, but at the same time, it's like, okay, well, I looked into it, and there really is nothing else. I've learned all abilities and all that, so. Yeah, it's good stuff, though. Mostly I'm ready to be done. I do want to try out Legends mode, but I have to have the right kind of time to do that unless I can find a way to do it solo. If I can do it solo, then I will. But I think pretty much I'm probably going to have people to play with unless there's like computer players that could help me get through that stuff. Because if there's computer players, I just do it that way. Then I don't have to worry about trying to track someone down to play. But yeah, because I would like to get those remaining achievements, since I have right now I have all the base game achievements, so I have the actual platinum, since that's separate, and the platinum trophy on PlayStation. Although annoyingly, the PlayStation app, although it shows that I recently played Ghost of Tsushima, it just shows the PS4 version on there. With all the trophies and everything, even though of course this is the PS5 and this is the director's cut with all that extra stuff, so I don't know, it doesn't really matter. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, I still have them on Steam, so that's what I care about more in this case. But yeah, think that's about.
Okay.
What were you gonna ask? Something?
I was say it's definitely. I say it's. I'm definitely. I'll say I'm glad you told me about the extra technique point because that would have been bugging me.
Yeah.
If I get to that point, I mean, I want to get all the stuff, but I think if I do actually end up doing that, it's good to know that there will be a technique point left over, and it won't be driving me crazy like what I need to spend it on.
Right.
But, so
Yeah, definitely.
I have a question though about Shin Megami Tensei.
Mm-hmm.
So, with Vengeance, is that a separate pathway, sort of like how there are 3 pathways with the base version, or is that going to have 3 pathways as well?
I assume it's going to have probably 3 pathways within that separate thing. Because basically, when you start up the game, almost immediately after you start it up, you are like in this dream sequence. You see this this girl like floating in the ether, and then you're asked, you can either take her hand or you can not take her hand. If you don't take her hand, you just continue along the normal story path that the original game has. If you take her hand, it takes you along the new path, which will make it so that you'll have all the new story. And then I assume from there, probably it will have the chaos, neutral, and order paths, or whatever they're called.
Okay, so then that would be like 6 paths total you could go down.
Yeah,
technically.
Yeah, basically 2 stories with 6 different paths. So, but then I did play one more thing. Okay, so I played Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep 0.2 Fragmentary Passage. What I ended up doing with this is I decided to go ahead and remap the controls after all. So originally, I think the biggest struggle I was having was because I was trying to... I still had A mapped as the confirm button. So I remapped the buttons. And originally, when I was having issues with the remapping, it was because of the fact that basically I was remapping like 3 or 4 different things, and it was just throwing me off. So what I decided to do instead was I just simply set it so that B was the confirm button, so that A was cancel/jump. And then and you can do this in the game normally. It doesn't give you different glyphs or anything. It just has it that way. And then from there, using the Steam controller configurations, I set X and B as being opposite. So X is my attack/confirm. A is still my jump/cancel, and then B ends up being my block/dodge. So, it worked out a lot better that way. I ended up finding that was a lot easier. The camera's still pretty bad in the game, but that still helped quite a lot. Just made it a lot easier to overall be able to play the game that I wanted to play it. So I went ahead and played that, and I finished it. It's only like, I think 3-4 hours long altogether. Now, I didn't do absolutely everything, and I'm probably going to, when I feel up to it, just go back to the previous areas and find remaining like treasure chests and stuff. I don't think there's like any secret bosses necessarily, but there are, there's like objectives that are in a checklist that you can complete, of course, and I don't know if I would necessarily try to do achievements, because I'm not because I would imagine you probably have to complete the game on critical separate from completing it on proud mode. I don't know, because there's an achievement that's proud or critical, and I did it on proud. I don't know, I'd have to look into that. But anyway, at least as of right now, I don't have any plans necessarily to try and get all achievements, but I did I may still go back and at least get the rest of the treasure chests, and at least might consider redoing the final boss just for the sake of I mean, if there's any additional like cutscenes or anything that come as a result of that, but I'm not really sure if there is or not. So anyway, but yeah, it is pretty great. I played it mostly on the Steam Deck. In fact, actually, I think the only time I didn't play it on the Steam Deck was when I was recording footage today, which thankfully the NVIDIA recording thing worked fine now, so I was able to get my much higher frame rate gameplay. I mean, it wasn't staying locked at 240, but it was like typically I think the lowest it was getting down to was like 160, and then it was going as high as 240. So I mean, at that point, it really doesn't make any difference because it's just so high that, you know, it's like super smooth. But yeah, I did enjoy it overall. Story-wise, there's not much to it. You know, it's pretty. It kind of like resolves a couple of mostly minor plot holes that were created by the games after like Kingdom Hearts 1 and so on, as well as it does a little bit of connecting to the later games as well. Of course, setting up for Kingdom Hearts 3, which is, you know, the next game after it. But along with that, this isn't something I played because it's not something that's playable, but I went ahead and I looked into, okay, what are the other, with like those web browsers / mobile games, what are the things that you actually need in terms of lore to understand before going into Kingdom Hearts 3? So I found that a YouTube playlist, I think it was just from Kingdom Hearts Insider, that you could watch all the cutscenes from the mobile game. So just all the like important stuff that you need to know in order to continue on. And I mean, it was maybe about an hour's worth of cutscenes. Thankfully they cut out all the fights from it because I didn't want to watch the fights. And like, I absolutely despise the art style. I hate the cutesy art style. It just really distracts from the story and everything. And of course the animations are horrific, and I hate it so much from that standpoint. But what I will say is that despite that, the story was actually pretty interesting, and it actually kept me in it. I mean, like, once I got past like the first little bit, it really kept me engaged, and I actually wanted to see the whole resolution to it. And it was basically necessary to go through that in order to check out the last part that's included with 2.8, with Kingdom Hearts 2.8, which is Kingdom Hearts Key back cover, which is basically like the events of the mobile game, which is Kingdom Hearts Key, except from a different perspective, basically from a different side's perspective of what happened during that time. So, and that's just like a 1 hour movie, basically. That's I don't think there was ever a game for it. I believe it was only ever just a 1 hour movie cutscene thing, basically. So I watched through all that. Then started going through Kingdom Hearts Union Key, or Union Cross, excuse me, Union Cross, which takes place after the back cover thing. So I started going through that. That one's taking a bit longer because there's a lot more to it, and because unfortunately some of these playlists, I mean, one of the playlists I found like had all the fights included in there too, and so I had to keep fast forwarding through those. And like, I'm literally just trying to get through these story elements so that when I am basically just so that I can finish that, then I'll rewatch probably the cutscenes from 0.2, because that's supposed to take place right after the end of Union Cross. Rewatch all those cutscenes, and then I can finally go into Kingdom Hearts 3. So, That's more or less what I'm aiming for. I will briefly mention, although I didn't play much of it, I did go ahead and boot up, because it's the next one on the list that hasn't been recorded for the comparisons, Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch on the Switch. And I will say that the game looks great. It seems to run pretty well. I don't think it's doing 60, but man, that introduction is slow. It was, I'm like, I just barely made it over to like the fantasy world portion, which is like, I think maybe about 40-ish, 45 minutes maybe that it took me to get there from starting a new game. And so I haven't fully decided what I'm doing yet, but I think I'm probably, when I do the comparison, I'm just going to completely cut out all that earlier stuff, because while it shows how the character gets from our world to this other world, it's just long and tedious, and I don't think anybody really wants to see any of that. At least I know I wouldn't want to see it, because you don't get much of any real action. Basically, you get like a tiny bit of action in that first 40 minutes, and then the rest of it is just setup. Whereas at least with like Shin Megami Tensei 5, yes, there is some initial setup and there's not a ton of gameplay, but the story itself has enough is interesting enough to where it kind of gets you going more. Plus the music's really good, and then it doesn't take long to get into like the action and the exploration. This game is just taking way longer, so I only got a portion of that recorded, and then I had to stop recording because I had to make dinner and stuff. But I was able to do that recording like the kids went to the library for a while, so that gave me a nice gap after I was done with work to work on that, to record some of that. So anyway, but yeah, that's it. That's everything this week, other than playing games with the boys on the weekend.
Question I had with Kingdom Hearts.
Mm-hmm.
So for that game, how's the camera work? Is that sort of like the older ones where you just had the shoulder buttons move the camera, or do you actually use
you can use the right stick? Because this was a PS4 game. I don't know if any of the remasters. I would assume the remasters all have camera controls with the stick now, but I'm not positive on that front. So, but this one, since it was specifically made for PS4, it does have the stick there.
Okay, yeah. I only mentioned that just because I remembered. I forgot how the camera controlled in the older games, and then when I went back to that, I thought about it. I was like, wow, he was right. This really is awkward. So I didn't know if like they had still kept that sort of general design, or if they had changed it a bit since then. But okay.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think having R and L for the camera controls would be better, because of the fact that that's something, because you don't have to take your thumb off the buttons in order to control it. Then you can change the camera. But I mean, either way, like, I don't know if the camera's as bad in Kingdom Hearts 3 as it is in 0.2. I'm hoping that it's not. But it's probably also just a function of getting used to working with that type of thing. And it's just most games have much better cameras in them, or, that it's much easier to adjust on the fly, and this one, it's just not as easy. So, I don't know. Either way, I'll figure it out when I get into Kingdom Hearts 3, if nothing else. And I've never really had significant issues with the camera in Kingdom Hearts that I can recall. I never really remember that being a point of frustration as much as just my own lack of skill. But yeah. All right. Anything else before we get into the news?
No, sir.
All right, so we got some interesting stuff this week. Technically, it's kind of a light news week, even though we do have more stories than we did previously. But one of the first things that we're going to cover here is regarding the PlayStation VR 2. And let me use this here. So, according to VGC Video Games Chronicle, Sony's reportedly cut investment in VR with only 2 titles in development in-house for a PSVR 2 for the PSVR 2 headset. Of course, that is coming to PC later this year, or rather an adapter for it, so that it will be usable on PC. But there's not really much of anything else about this other than the idea. Well, according to Android Central, there will be very few opportunities for VR development at Sony going forward. Sony has not commented on it. But yeah, your thoughts?
I think this is definitely something that is likely, and which is kind of a sad thing, because Sony, with their track record, whenever they really try to experiment with something, and I'm not saying the PSVR 2 is a failure, but it's not something that is really pumping numbers. So I guess if it's something that isn't easily a success, then they sort of just back off from it, which, I mean, and they just drop support. I mean, sort of like with the Vita, yep. Which partially was stuff on there, and especially with the proprietary storage and stuff like that. Yep. But I feel like Sony could make this work better if they actually just put in the resources and just put in the efforts. I mean, even though it was a financial failure, I at least have to give Nintendo the credit with supporting the Wii U throughout its entire life. Yep. I mean, if they treated it the way the third-party developers treated it, the life cycle would have ended way sooner. But, you know, they still stuck with it, even though it wasn't doing well at all. So, I mean, if Sony had that same mindset and focused, like, putting in as much effort as they could into the PSVR 2, they could be doing so much better with it. And I mean, if they wanted to, they could probably even make another handheld. And if they put in the effort, I have no reason to think that they couldn't make a sort of rebound. Maybe it wouldn't be as big as the PSP, but it would have been something that would have been much better than the Vita, and it's something that, you know, would have been very successful, in my opinion. So I think it's really too early for them to just, like, pull the plug on this. And I mean, I will say, though, that they definitely have made mistakes without the PSVR 2. I think one of the biggest things they did on the console side of things was the fact that it did not support PSVR games. So if someone had already bought a bunch of titles for the original PSVR, they could not play those games on the PSVR 2.
Right.
And if they wanted to play those games, they would have to buy them all over again, which was, you know, people were not completely fond of. So I feel like they could have done a whole lot better with this. But I do think it is likely that they are, you know, just not dropping support for this. And third-party developers are going to be the ones who are pretty much picking up the slack for Sony in this case. Again, similar to like the Vita.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it, like, if I should say, I don't have any reason to doubt the legitimacy of this reporting, just based on Sony's track record. I mean, they've shown themselves time and time again that they will abandon hardware like this. I mean, they did it with the Vita, they did it with the PSVR, and I mean, I think the PSVR, I don't actually know how many in-house games it got. I mean, I did get some, but I don't think it got very many. And PSVR 2, I think the only thing that they've really done in-house was probably something related to Astrobot, which actually they might not even have done that. I mean, I know that they did something for the PS5 when it first came out with Astrobot. And then they did Rise and Call of the Mountain. I think that, I can't remember if that was launch or if that was earlier this year. Yeah, it was the launch. But apart from that, I don't think they've done anything like first party for it. And it's just the way that it goes. It's maybe with it coming to PC, if the sales spike, maybe that'll change their minds. But my guess is it's probably going to be a too little too late situation. That even if it does do well on PC, they'll already have stopped supporting it. And they're not going to pick up support all of a sudden, because by the time they get a game made for it, people won't be using it anymore, and yeah, all that stuff. So, it is what it is.
I guess one thing to add on, though, is the fact that they already handicapped themselves, though, with the PC market, just because they're not bringing over all the features from the that are available on the PS5. So if they're expecting a huge spike, they really mess things up for themselves in that aspect.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving on into our next story here. Last week we talked about the potential for an Uncharted 1 remake. And now there's more news, or at least another rumor, rather. Same sources last time for Special Nick, which, like I said, I believe is part of one of those Xbox podcasts, that a remaster or remake of the trilogy, of the God of War trilogy, is coming. It could be announced this year or next year. He's not really sure about that part. But it does make sense considering the fact that it is the 20th anniversary of the original God of War next year. So your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this definitely seems logical. Definitely seems something that I could see happening, and it makes sense. And I mean, especially since God of War is already a very popular franchise for Sony, like, I think it would make sense to capitalize on that and remake the games. I mean, I definitely at the very least would see remaking the first game, or at least the first two, since those were originally PS2 games. I mean, sure, they were enhanced and remastered for the PS3 and then ported over to PS4, but I think because they're still, at the end of the day, PS2 games, having a full-on remaster for those games makes sense. Just because, it's they graphically didn't age well in that regard. And I guess it would make sense to also do 3, since that's, if they're already working on 1 and 2, why not just go ahead and do 3, even though that was on the PS3 and was already graphically better. But if you can put it all in the same engine and make it all look the same, that's fine. I wonder, I guess I would wonder if they would keep the gameplay style the same as the first games, or if they would try to change it into the gameplay of the new games for God of War 4 or 2018 and Ragnarok.
Right.
I would personally want to have them keep it the way it was in the original, just because that hack and slash gameplay appealed to me more. But I just don't know how they're going to do that. And I guess one thing would be if they change things from how they were in the original trilogy, if you know what I mean. That's something else that would be that would be curious to know about. But yeah, definitely interesting though to hear about this report.
Yeah, this is actually something that I was thinking about the same thing regarding what kind of things they would change. Now, I do think that it's highly unlikely that they would try to change the gameplay to make it like 2018 and Ragnarok, because that was one of the, people who are fans of the original games, that was the thing they hated the most about these new ones. They wanted the old school hack and slash combo heavy gameplay, and they didn't get that. Plus, you can't jump in the most recent God of War games. Ragnarok has the Blades of Chaos with basically a hook shot function at times, which is sort of almost jumping. but otherwise, there's no jumping, and like I definitely understand people's complaints. Of course, I didn't play the originals because of the content that was in them before. I've since tried to play the first God of War. I was playing it on Vita actually, and I mean I was enjoying the gameplay overall. I still I'm hesitant with that certain content that they have in there. All the like the sex mini games and the nudity. It's like I don't want to deal with that stuff, and that is something that I actually could see them changing because of the way that Sony is with these games nowadays, or with their games in general, the censorship. And this is something that I know that there's going to be, especially the rage bait YouTubers are, if they change that, they're not going to be happy about it, or at least they'll say they'll be against it because it's a change to the vision of the original game, and it's because it's censorship. Now, personally, I would actually be very, very pro them censoring. Getting rid. It's like that stuff just isn't necessary. I understand the reason why it was there, and okay, but I would be totally fine with them not having any of that stuff in there, because then that would give me way more motivation to actually really play through these. Because otherwise it's basically just I'm having to figure out ways to get past those portions, because some of them I don't know if any of them, I hope that most of them are optional to where you can avoid them if you so desire, but I know certain bosses, they're still the way they are, and the remake could potentially take care of that, but I don't know. I'm not assuming anything on that front. This is one where I think it's more the idea of remakes / remasters, whichever it ends up being, is more welcome than it was with Uncharted 1, even though I love Uncharted, just because of the fact that it is much older, because these games are from PS2. Well, God of War 1 and 2 are from PS2, and God of War 3 is from PS3, so from that standpoint it makes more sense. But 20th anniversary next year, that seems like that would be the perfect timing for that as well. Which reminds me, just as a side note, something that occurred to me is that next year is the 40th anniversary of Mario.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
I can't believe that, but it's yep, 40th anniversary. It's already been that long.
Wow. Jeez.
Which means it's the perfect time for them to do a bunch of Mario stuff that year, and I guarantee there's going to be a bunch of stuff, probably either Mario Odyssey 2 or some other 3D Mario game with the new Switch. I'd say that's almost guaranteed, especially with it being the 40th anniversary. There's no way they're going to skip that. But also, I could see them, releasing maybe a second collection of sorts. I'm not really sure what they would put in it. Of course, my hope would be Mario Galaxy 2 would be part of it, but I don't honestly know what else they would put in it unless they put Odyssey in there. And like I said, I don't have any idea what they would put in it if they did another collection. But I just want them to release Mario Galaxy 2 on the Switch, because Galaxy 1 was such a perfect Switch game. The gyro worked beautifully for that game, and of course it was 60 frames per second. It looked fantastic. It was, say what you will about the Mario 64 and Mario Sunshine ports. Fully understand, the fact that they're only 30 doesn't make any sense given the hardware. But Mario Galaxy was 60 and beautiful and wonderful. Amazing game. And it was my first time playing it too, so I fully enjoyed it. But that's going off topic here. So, any other thoughts on the God of War potential remakes?
No, sir.
All right, well, we're going to just go ahead and stick with the PlayStation news here. So, PlayStation is getting another exclusive. Well, exclusive-ish. So, PlayStation's no stranger to making deals to get exclusive content in their games. One of the best examples I can think of is with Destiny 1. When it launched, there were 2 exclusive guns. Actually, was it 2? It might have only been 1, actually. I can't remember if there may have only been 1 exclusive exotic gun, which was Hawkmoon. I can't remember if there was a second one or if I'm mixing it up. But anyway, they at least had 1 exclusive exotic. They had 1 or 2 exclusive strikes, and then I think like an exclusive PvP map when they launched. They've done a lot of things like that throughout the years. But now they're doing some exclusive cutscenes in Sonic Cross Shadow Generation. I can't say this. Sonic Cross Shadow Generations. Exclusive cutscene. It's like a prologue. Okay, your thoughts?
I honestly can't believe that this is a thing. I mean, this is probably one of the dumbest things you could actually make exclusive. Like a cutscene. Sony dropped money to make a cutscene exclusive. And I mean, sure, this is sort of thing has happened before, but like why a cutscene? Why a prologue cutscene? That doesn't make sense at all. Like, why would even Sega entertain that idea in the first place? That part, I mean, obviously Sony paid the money, but why? Like, who even came up with the idea in the first place? And it just baffles my mind. And I even had to think about when I heard this news. I almost couldn't think of any scenario where having exclusive content for a game is justifiable. And although I stopped and thought about it for a second and realized there's probably only one instance where having exclusive content was justifiable, and that was with, at least for this one game, I don't know how it handled with 3, but I know 4 didn't need this, but with Soul Calibur 2, that made sense where each version of the game had an exclusive character. GameCube had Link, PS2 had Heihachi, and Xbox had, I think, Xbox had Spawn, which granted wasn't an Xbox character, but still, they gave him one. So like, I think that was the only time where having exclusive content works, because it matched with each respective platform.
Mm-hmm.
In cases like this, what sense does it make to have everyone just have a cutscene and like no one else gets to have a cutscene? And in fact, even I remember going back, there's a game called Fury, and it had like some additional content that came out in the future. I think it was for the Xbox version. It was either for the Xbox version or the PlayStation version. It had a cutscene that was exclusive to that. For this one boss fight, it had a cutscene that was exclusive for that. No other version, not even on PC, had that cutscene. Only on this one version. It baffled my mind. Like, why would you have a cutscene? Why would you take all the time to make this cutscene, and it's only for one platform? Like, that didn't make any sense at all. It's the same thing here. Like, it doesn't make sense as to why you would have something, especially, it might not even be a big deal, but locking a part of the story behind a full console price tag is ridiculous. Like, there's no justifiable reason for this at all. It's dumb. That's just all I gotta say.
Yep, I agree. I honestly am hoping that this cutscene gets spread all over social media after it comes out, so that everybody can just watch it and never have to buy the PlayStation version unless they were already going to. I mean, now for Sonic, the story is not important at all. So this is also kind of like a completely worthless exclusive thing. I mean, it is. It's completely worthless. It doesn't make any real difference for anything. And once again, the cutscene will be online, and then it won't even matter. People will watch the cutscene and be like, okay, that was a waste of time, and then they'll move on and play the game. And that's all there is to it. Yeah, it's just... it's just stupid. It's what it is. It's like, I mean, it's not something that I would care about. Like, I think that definitely, like the example I gave of the Destiny 1 content that got locked out from the Xbox version that was only on PS4. Well, I should say, like, for the first year, and then they brought the stuff over, and same thing went with like further exclusive content that they got, because I think the first, well, all throughout Destiny 1, they had some exclusive content for the first year, then they had some exclusive content for the second year, and I think they had some for the third year, but I could be remembering wrong on that front. But yeah, and it was only on PlayStation, and then the next year it moved over to Xbox as well. But that was like, I mean, for me it didn't matter because I had a PlayStation, and at the time I was more of a fanboy anyway, so like I was like, haha. But now I look back and I'm like, yeah, that was kind of scummy. I mean, but this is PlayStation's pattern. This is what they do. They pay for exclusive content, and sometimes that exclusive content is significant. Now, if they did that with like Destiny now, that they own the developer, I could understand that a little bit more because they own them. But even then, it's like, it's just not necessary. I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily going to make a huge difference, especially because now it's not just Xbox and PlayStation. It's now on PC as well. And I think the majority of people probably play on PC anyway. I mean, they have such a huge install base, especially because between the little bit that I played and what everybody else has been saying, this current expansion is fantastic. Like, it's top tier for Destiny. So, which reminds me, I should probably get back into that one of these days, but yeah, we'll see when that happens. Anyway, point being, in the end, this is more PlayStation paying for exclusive content. This time, I don't think it matters too much of anyone. I doubt that there is anyone who actually cares about the lore of Sonic enough to where they'll be bothered by this, especially because of how easily this will be obtainable, and the fact that it's a prologue. It's not like a post-credits cutscene that somehow gives something like really valuable and interesting. But whatever. Okay, so getting back into things here. So Miyazaki, who is the director for From Software's Soulsborne games, Hidetaka Miyazaki, has basically defended against people's insistence that Elden Ring should have an easier, have different difficulties, have an easy mode, essentially. And he has defended his decision to keep it hard by saying that it would break the game itself to turn down the challenge. To quote him specifically, and this is an interview with The Guardian, he said, "If we really wanted the whole world to play the game, we could just crank the difficulty down more and more. But that wasn't the right approach. Had we taken that approach, I don't think the game would have done what it did, because the sense of achievement that players gain from overcoming these hurdles is such a fundamental part of the experience. Turning down difficulty would strip the game of that joy, which in my eyes would break the game itself." So there's also some further stuff in an interview with Eurogamer. He said that, regarding accessibility options, he said to Eurogamer that it's not something he's opposed to in the slightest, that we'll continue to look at it and see how we can add those features to our future titles. Going further, he says, we want to provide these challenging encounters and these menacing threats, and in order to do that, we wanted to give the player a lot of freedom of approach. We wanted them to feel free in how they choose and when they choose to approach and tackle these hardships. So players who look for that sort of challenge in our games will find the challenge on equal footing in the DLC as well. And that being said, the TLDL of that is that Miyazaki has said, Elden Ring is intended to be difficult. I don't want to ever change that with this game or any of my other titles in this genre. Your thoughts?
Okay, well, actually, before I actually do that, so I'm gonna be getting a bit of a soapbox. Do you actually want to share anything before I, go on a long rant?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and give my thoughts on this. So I know that we're basically on the same page, but I am 100% with him on this. I'm someone who struggles with these games. Like, I do not have an easy time, but I absolutely will say that it would not be satisfying to go into one of these games and have an easy mode, because then it just completely reduces what makes these games what they are. It's like, I don't know how to explain it, but I've heard people say, oh, well, this should be an accessibility option. And no, accessibility options are for people who have actual problems. Like, for example, what they've done in The Last of Us, where they've added the ability for people who are blind to play the games. That type of thing, that's a whole different story. That is an accessibility option. That is something that I think is really neat, that they're able to implement something like that. However, making the game easier, that's not making it accessible in the same sense. Yes, it's making it so that more people can play it, but that's not the purpose of these games. You take away the difficulty, then it's not a Soulsborne game anymore. It's just an action game. And there's no satisfaction in that. Now, yeah, occasionally it's nice to go into a boss fight and just beat it first try, and it's like, yeah, that's awesome. But then the problem is that if all of the fights are like that, if you just make the game so that it's super easy, you completely take away from the things that the major identity of these games. They're intended to be difficult. You're intended to struggle through it, and you have to learn the patterns. You have to keep going at it until you figure it out. And even though I am not someone who's any good at these games, I have yet to beat a single Souls-like or Soulsborne type of game. I am not someone who wants to turn it down. Even though there are times where I will do everything I can to farm souls, or whatever the equivalent, whatever they're called in Elden Ring, I can't remember. But anyway, it's like I will try to do things. I will find ways to cheese the bosses because they are cheap, and so I will be cheap back at them if I can. But I don't want them to turn down the difficulty. I want to experience the difficulty for what it is, because this is how the game was meant to be played. I don't want them to make it too easy. And I think that turning down the difficulty is it's compromising what the game is supposed to be. So that's the short version. That's basically, I'd just be repeating myself over and over if I kept talking. So I'm going to let you rant away. Have fun.
Okay. So, I guess a couple things that, sort of leading into how things are going with what I want to say. So, people have so I don't want to say this, well, not necessarily review bomb, but Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree is sitting at a mixed reception on Steam. A lot of people are talking about because of the difficulty. Now, here's the thing that a lot of people, I guess, overlooked or just didn't pay attention to, was that Miyazaki said that the enemies and the bosses in Shadow of the Erdtree scale with your level. So if you entered the DLC thinking it was going to be a cakewalk because you were level 200 or something, the enemies scaled with your level. So whatever they were going to be before, they're pretty much right at the same. They're right there with you. So that's why they're dealing a whole lot more damage. That's why the bosses are two-shotting you, is because you went in the game pretty much over-leveled to a degree. I mean, some people even went there with like level 300, 500. They're like, why are these enemies dealing so much damage? Well, he said that they're gonna scale with you, in that sense. Also, there were, I can't remember what they were called, but he also said that there are these things which you actually have, which you can go around throughout the world and explore, which is, another incentive to not just rush through the game, but explore and find these items that actually make the game easier for you. Because I can't remember, I don't know what the ability is because I haven't played it yet, but the idea is that they help sort of negate the effects of enemies scaling with you. So I think if people went ahead and did that, they would have a better time. Also, the DLC for Souls games are known to be more difficult than the base content. So people thinking, why is the hard game hard? it's like, why? It makes sense. Although before I continue further on, I also want to say that like sometime before we actually started recording, I saw that sadly From Software bent the knee and they're setting an update to reduce the difficulty of the DLC, so it's not gonna be at the same difficulty as it was before. Obviously, it's not gonna, I don't think it's gonna be like overly drastic where like it's easy, but it's not the same difficulty as it currently is. So that's the sad thing in that aspect there, that I want to share. But going back to Souls-likes and difficulty, like here's like one thing. People know that these are supposed to be difficult. Like, From Software and the Souls games made their reputation by being difficult. People can't be complaining that they're difficult because they know they were difficult in the first place. Like, if you're someone who, say, never played games before in your life, say you like had a completely different hobby and you said, oh, I think I'm going to try out this video game thing. I mean, it seems interesting. I want to give it a shot. And then you picked up Dark Souls and then you were like, wow, this is very hard. I don't like this at all. No, in that aspect, I can understand. But if you're someone who is a gamer, you should know that Dark Souls games are difficult. You shouldn't be going into them thinking, this is hard. Why? This sucks. Why is it so hard? You should know this. You should expect this by now. Like, it doesn't make sense. And yeah, I understand that it's probably most likely more difficult than the base game. Like, I went through the DLC for Dark Souls 1. The very first boss fight in the DLC, which is the Manticore, that thing wiped the floor with me. And like, it took me a lot of tries before I beat that boss fight, but I overcame it. Then I went to the next fight, which was the Black Dragon. That was difficult. I overcame that. I faced Artorias the Knight. He was difficult, but I overcame him. And finally, I went to Manus, and that was the worst of the worst for me. It took me a lot of tries, but I finally beat him. Were those bosses more difficult? Were they very aggravating sometimes? Yes, but I understood that I needed to keep trying and, study the patterns, improve on what I'm doing in order to beat them. And that's what I did. People need to apply that same mindset. I can't remember what it was. It's a very funny thing. Like, I can't remember what his name is. It's some streamer on Twitch or something like that. I think he played only games like Call of Duty or maybe some sports games here. I can't remember, but it's like that type of genre sort of thing of what he plays. He played Elden Ring his first Soulsborne ever. He had a difficult time with it, but he kept persevering, and eventually he beat the game. And not only that, but then he went into the DLC, and even though it was difficult, even though it was harder, he still overcame bosses that people were saying, this is impossible. And sure, it took like multiple times, and he spent like hours playing against these bosses. But if the fact that someone who only primarily plays games that are like COD and maybe like FIFA can go in their first time overcome these bosses after spending a lot of time on it, why can't people who know what these games are like and have experience playing them, and why can't they do the same thing?
Yeah.
Like that definitely, like, when you put it in that perspective, you're like, well, what are you complaining for? Like, you know what to expect. Like, he probably knows what to expect because he's probably heard of the games, but he still went into the game, and he didn't complain about the fact, saying like, man, this is too difficult. He just kept playing at it, and he eventually beat these bosses. And I mean, Dark Souls 3, there's one boss, Pontiff Sullivan, and I died to him the most in that game. Like, I think he was the boss I died to the most. I think maybe it was about 27 times, something like that. I kept going through it, and it spent me like 4 different gaming sessions before I finally beat him, maybe even 5. And even though a lot of that was because of me and what I was doing as gameplay wise, because I'm stubborn, I still think he's probably one of my favorite bosses in the entire game, just because I like how the boss fight goes down. So like, I think the fact is you can still enjoy it. Like, I think people are just thinking that it's like, oh, it's hard, so like it's bad. Like, no, it's not. Like, you can find ways to get around it. You can find ways to improve what you're doing. You can find, maybe ideas. Like, maybe, I know some people say like, well, I shouldn't have to change my build, and that might be true. I don't think you necessarily have to change your build in order to beat a boss. I don't think you should be able to, or should have to do that. But maybe there's something that you haven't considered that could help you out there. But at the end of the day, though, these games are hard. You should know that. You should just go in knowing that. I mean, and the crazy thing is, like, people who say that they should be made easier, to be more accessible. Has anyone ever applied that mindset to any type of game? Like, has anyone ever said, oh, well, I mean, actually, no, I will take that back. People actually did say that for Fire Emblem, because they said, I think this was maybe before Awakening, they said, yeah, you should remove the permadeath mode, so that way it's more accessible for people to play. And they did actually do that with the casual mode. But, I don't see people going around saying, like, you should change this to fit my play style. Like, it's a different type of game. Like, if you want a game that's centered around the aspects you want, play a game that's centered around those aspects. Yeah. I mean, and there's like another sort of analogy that I remember from a long time ago, and it's not necessarily the same thing, but it's sort of like with people. The topic was about writing, and people who write in different genres. Like, someone who is writing I guess sort of like a fantasy setting. You don't go up to them and say, you know what would be really cool if you had like power armor, and then if you like said like giant warships flying through the air. And it's like, you're completely changing what the core of this genre is, because you want it to be something else. You want to take a Soulsborne and change it into something like, I mean, I guess difficulty-wise, and I'm being very general here, but like, say, Zelda. I mean, I'm not saying that gameplay-wise are the same, but I guess, like, if you want to, like, say, I want to have the same type of challenge as I would in Zelda, that's sort of like what I feel like they're doing here. And sometimes games just aren't for everyone.
Right.
Like, you can't go into like a genre like, say, a strategy game and say, oh, this strategy game does not work. I mean, there should be more puzzle elements. Like, no, that's not what this is. I'm sorry. That's my long diatribe there. But yeah, there definitely shouldn't be any change to the difficulty.
Agreed. And not every game is for every person. That's just how it is, and there's nothing wrong with that. If a game doesn't match like what you're looking for, then it might just not be for you. And if it's too difficult, then just don't play it. If you're not willing to put in the effort to try and get better and get through challenges, then maybe you should just not play the game. And I'm glad that Miyazaki's sticking to his guns on that front. Knowing that they're making some changes to make Erdtree easier, my guess is it's probably going to be pretty minimal. It might just be like, I heard that there was at least one boss where it was just a little more unforgiving, and to the point where maybe maybe his hitboxes were kind of messed up and stuff too, and I don't know. Anyway, we'll see what happens with all that, but either way, I think that it's better that they don't make that change, that they don't change anything unless it's just something that's actually broken. And just tell people to put forth the effort. It's the only way you're going to get any better. All right. Any final thoughts on that topic?
No, sir.
All right, so we got some good news related to Steam. For starters, there is a beta currently available, at least I believe it's currently available, to be able to record gameplay on Steam, and I believe it's Steam and, well, let me look at this real quick. Okay, so I'm going to look at what it says specifically on the page related to this. So let's scroll to the top here. So this is a new built-in system for creating and sharing your gameplay footage within sorry, my brain. I lost my spot. Within Steam and the Steam Deck. It is verified to work with both. And the way this is set is that if you have this on, by default, it can record your game. I mean, it will be recording your game in the background at all times. And then you can, you basically you set certain like requirements as far as duration and storage limits. Like it can't exceed a certain length of time. It can't exceed a certain amount of space that's taking up. And you can, along with that, there's like a replay function that you can use for that. So like if you're trying to figure out what went wrong when you died in something like Dark Souls or Elden Ring, as they show in this clip here. But then you can also easily clip out stuff if you had like a really successful moment in a game that you want to be able to share, and you're not already recording your gameplay otherwise. And furthermore, you can share the clips very easily, which is very cool. I haven't messed with this at all yet. I think it has some definite potential to be really, really useful. Especially if you're not wanting to, if you're not already like recording in dock mode, because I certainly don't want to have to dock my Steam Deck in order to record footage all the time. But anyway, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this is definitely pretty cool. And one thing that actually I had seen which made things very interesting is the fact that it's that what were the exact words here, saying that it works with any game as long as it supports Steam Overlay, or allows the Steam Overlay. So that Valve also said that this includes non-Steam titles. So say for example, if you had games that you bought on another platform, or even if you had like GOG, because I do that with my GOG games just so I can get the just so for the Steam input control overlay, and I love that. So for games like those, you could record those games even though they aren't from Steam. You could still record those games as well, which I think is very cool, actually. One thing though is something that Valve mentioned in like the FAQ was the fact that it can impact performance. So, and because of the fact, and like, it will by default try to go for your dedicated graphics card if you have one, but if not, it will go to default to your CPU. So, because of that, that tends to be more intensive. So, if you're playing a game on, say, your Steam Deck that is kind of intensive, that could probably really affect your gameplay or your recording as well.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something interesting there. But I mean, overall though, this is pretty cool. Interesting. I would have to. I mean, there's so much here. I mean, as far as like the settings wise go, that I would have to look more at this before I even try it out. But I like this idea. It's definitely seems to be a good way to like make your own clips and make your own recordings without necessarily pulling up something like, say, OBS or Streamlabs or something like that,
right.
To get footage. So I like that. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and something else I forgot to mention is that you don't have to have it set to automatically record. You can also just set it to, or you can record on demand, so you can just set a hotkey for like one of the back buttons, for example, and then start recording that way. But yeah, I can see this being super useful, especially for just getting gameplay recorded for our podcast. You know, if I'm playing a bunch on my Steam Deck, I can record some footage real quick without having to worry about docking and everything else, and just take care of that. So I really like that. But yeah, I'll definitely have to look into that. I can't remember if I'm on the beta right now or if I'm on the stable version of SteamOS, but yeah, we'll have to. Okay. Yeah, it looks like it's pretty easy to find on the Steam Deck too. So that's very good to know. Either way, I'm looking forward to checking this out. I'll definitely mess with it over the next week whenever I'm playing some games. All right, any other thoughts on that?
No, sir.
All right, so we got one final thing to talk about this evening. So Hori is putting out an officially licensed Steam controller. Now, there's a whole host of different features related to this. Unfortunately, the page is primarily in Japanese, so it's going to be harder to hard to get a clear idea of every single feature, because there's just a whole host of different stuff in here. Let me see if I can actually. I think it was also on the Steam page itself. Some different features that are going to be included with it. The first thing I do want to note is this does not have a touchpad included, which is a bummer for those games where you would actually use it, because there are a few that I use it. I mean, I use it in Ghost of Tsushima whenever I'm playing in handheld mode. Granted, if I'm playing docked, I'm probably if I'm playing Ghost of Tsushima, I'm probably not gonna play it docked, because if I'm gonna play it docked, I'd rather just play it on my PC where it runs better. But it is going to have it's going to have some back buttons. There's, I believe, so there's 2 on top of the controller, I believe, and then 2 on the back. They're programmable just like normal. It'll have full gyro functionality, which can be activated with the with touch sensors on the sticks, just like with the Steam Deck, which is fantastic because that is not a feature that is present in the original Steam controller. It has the option to switch the mode for the triggers to be either analog, like you would use for racing games and that sort of thing, or digital inputs, so that you don't have to deal with the travel distance as much being a factor for like a shooter, for example. It'll have, I can't remember the name of the feature, but it's something to do with button mashing, basically. USB-C charging, has a looks like a pretty nice D-pad. Basically, this controller is laid out very similarly to an Xbox controller. Let's see here, what else is there? Oh, and it can be done either wired or Bluetooth. Has both the Steam and the quick access menus. Accessible, with the press of a button for each one. And Hori also has an app where you can customize what each of the buttons does. So I'm guessing that you can customize it on a per game basis as well, but I'm not positive on that front because once again this page is in Japanese. And because it's a graphic instead of actual text, there's not an easy way to translate it apart from like pulling out my phone and doing the Google Translate on that. So anyway, oh yeah, and this is they're gonna come in 4 different colors. There's white, black, a neon green, and then like a purple-ish color. So what are your thoughts?
Okay. Yeah, and I apologize if you had mentioned this already. I was trying to like look through all the stuff on here just to make sure I made mental notes of things. It will support both Steam input and X input. Mm-hmm. And you can actually switch. There's a button on there that you can switch back and forth between. The gyro support is only going to be for Steam input because of the way that X input doesn't support gyro support, so you can't use it in that aspect there. Now, when I first saw this, I was thinking, oh, cool, a Steam controller? That sounds pretty cool. Then I was like, wait, it's not an actual first-party controller. I was like, it's kind of a bummer. But then I thought, it's licensed by Valve, so it's not going to be bad. And I thought about it some more, and I realized it's a Steam input controller. That means that it's most likely going to be, for me, important because it's going to work underneath Linux. And I like that because of the fact that so far, now I haven't tried with my fresh install, but at least before, I could not get my Xbox controller to work with my PC. It works with my Steam Deck. It just doesn't work with my PC for whatever reason. Even though I have the Xbox drivers installed, it's not working. So this could definitely alleviate that issue because I really like the layout of an Xbox controller more than my DualSense controller, just because I like the asymmetrical sticks and stuff like that. So this is, perfect for me. But also, other stuff is the fact that it has the gyro. Like that's great. I'm glad that they have gyro in here. I might mess around with the extra customizable buttons. I mean, I'm not really doing too much with the back pedals on my Steam Deck, but having that option is great. But still, a lot of the customization that you're offered here is phenomenal. I definitely would say that I would wait. Okay, never mind. This is just, or at least what I see here. Okay, yeah, the app looks like it's just saying it's just for I thought it was like something completely for the completely like for all the features, but no, it's just like for the app. It's just for Windows 11 and 10 here. But should still everything else should be working. Oh, that's just for like X input. Yeah, never mind. That's just like X inputs. Never mind. But yeah, it's definitely something I will be interested in getting. I didn't see or hear anything about when this would be available for purchase. But I think I'm gonna still end up buying this, even if it's not directly at launch. It's still something that I am interested in getting. I am interested in, though, because I haven't seen anything, I'm interested in the price of this. I would probably want to say it might be, even though it's like a third-party controller, it's still got a lot of features in here. I might go on a limb and say it's going to be somewhere between $60 to $70, I think, especially considering the fact that you have the
I think it's actually cheaper.
Gyro.
Because the price in yen is 7,980 yen, and I'm pretty sure that converts to like $50 ish in US dollars.
Okay. Well, then in that case, yeah, I completely missed that part then. So, but then yeah, that's even better. So I probably would end up picking one up on release. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think this is good. I know that you would have preferred to have this here. The lack of touchpad isn't necessarily a deal breaker to me, just
Right.
because I didn't necessarily use it that much, and if I did want to end up using it, a touchpad in a sense, I have a couple of Steam controllers, like the older Steam controllers. So if I wanted to, for whatever, use a touchpad, I would just end up using those. But I think that this is probably a great way to take what Valve has done with the controls. I mean, minus of course they cut out the trackpads, but like all the other features that the Steam Deck has, and put them in an actual controller you can hold. I think that idea is great. I think it's definitely something people, especially after playing the Steam Deck, have wanted Valve to sort of like get back into, to make a Steam controller too. So this definitely scratches that itch for people, and yeah, this definitely looks great. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, and there is near the bottom of the page, it looks like it might be a potential release date, but it's in Japanese, and so I don't know my kanji well enough to where I could. In fact, I don't really remember any kanji, because that was something that I barely learned when I took Japanese.
It just says 2024 is the
Yeah,
year, but they don't have like an actual month or date.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure, because I figured since you know more of the Japanese of kanji and stuff, you might be able to read it. And I wasn't sure if it had a month. So either way, I'm like, I want one, but I need a good reason to get one, because I have more than enough controllers. Because currently on PC, I basically primarily use either my Xbox or my PS5 controller. That is my Xbox Series X or PS5 controller. I have an Xbox One controller, which unfortunately one of the shoulder buttons stopped working, and it's not simple to fix, and so I just never got around to fixing it. I think I need a specific kind of screwdriver. I might actually have the right kind of screwdriver to fix it, but main issue is just that one of the shoulder buttons wasn't working properly, and as a result, I've never been able to actually go in and see if I can do the fix that I would need to do in order to get it to work. So I'm not really sure about that part, but anyway, I mean, like, I have a Steam controller that I bought years ago, and I never used it, or rather, I tried using it. I think I tried using it with Prototype, and I did not like the way it worked. It didn't work at all for Destiny. That was another game I tried it on. I was hoping that it would work well for that, and it just didn't. Granted, it might work now, but it was just when I tried it initially, it didn't work. And of course, at that time, also, Destiny 2 was in Battle.net. It wasn't in Steam. So, I don't know. I mean, it might work for that. I was never a huge fan of the placement of stuff, particularly the joystick and the buttons, just because they're kind of like more in on the controller. Like, I liked the way it felt otherwise, and I liked the idea of it. It just never really worked that well for me. One of these days, I might actually try it again, though, for some other games, because there's some games where I could see it being pretty cool. And I bet probably typing on that is easier than it is on the touchpads on the Steam Deck, because of the fact that they're bigger and rounded and everything, and convex rather concave. I mean, so it's a little easier rather than being flat. But whatever. Anyway, yeah, I like the design of this controller. Like, that white looks really good, but I also have multiple white controllers. Both my PS4 and PS5 controllers are white. And I kind of like that purple, too. I mean, the black looks great, too, but I feel like I want to have something that's a little more distinct if I was going to get a new controller. And so I'd probably end up going for the purple. Kind of gives me GameCube nostalgia to a degree, even though it's a different color purple. But yeah. Anyway. Any final thoughts on that topic?
No, sir. No, sir.
All right. Well, we're getting to the end of the show here, so recommendations and dissuasions.
All right. So my recommendation, well, sort of have 1.5 recommendations. So my primary recommendation is J Music Ensemble. That's sort of a jazz group that does video game music, and
Okay.
I learned about this group because while I was cooking, I was in the mood. I thought I want to listen to the Super Mario 2 Overworld music, so I just randomly looked up on YouTube and stuff, and I was like, a jazz version, that sounds interesting. I'll look at that, and it sounded pretty good. And I went through some of their other tracks from other games, like some Sonic the Hedgehog, a couple of Yoshi stuff, Life Light from Smash Brothers Ultimate, and sounded great. Now lately, I don't think there's really too much that is going on, but like a lot of the stuff which I listened to was stuff from 4 years ago or so, which was like a lot of live performances. But I thought they sounded great. Like all of these renditions were good. So because of that, I was like, I actually want to recommend this like this week. So if you want to listen to some good, video game music and with a jazz spin on it, look up J Music Ensemble. And I guess my partial recommendation is going to be the Nitro deck for your Nintendo Switches. I will also say this though, get them on sale because these are pretty pricey. So if you can find them on sale, that's when I would recommend buying one. Only reason I don't necessarily recommend it completely is just because, again, which isn't necessarily a fault to the Nitro deck itself, but just because of how the Joy-Cons handheld placements are situated. The placements of the right stick is a bit of a pain, but everything else, though, I think the designs are pretty much incredible, and I couldn't ask for more. So definitely get that.
Cool. Well, I kind of have multiple recommendations, and it's because some of them are like most of them are more dependent on certain factors. So the first one I'm going to say, if you do not have Microsoft Office already, or you haven't renewed it, or you're tired of, like me, getting the very annoying notification that I need to actually register the product, there is an open source version of the Office suite called Only Office. I discovered it pretty recently, and it works great so far. I haven't used it a ton, but I've used it basically for Word and for PowerPoint, just because I was just getting tired of that constant notification. Oh, you need to register your product, but also because of the fact that I know that the Microsoft Office suite is expensive to have to pay a subscription for and everything else. And Only Office, it's a free product. It's open source, and it seems to work really well. One of the things I really like about it is that it opens like different documents and tabs, so you don't have to have a bunch of things stacked on your desktop where you have multiple documents and all that, and it's just a pain. That's pretty nifty, but it just seems to work really well. So I want to recommend that if you're looking for good Office software that doesn't cost you anything and is open source. But then a secondary recommendation, once again, just dependent on certain things. If you ever make homemade meatballs, I just made a batch the other day. I was a little short on the on breadcrumbs, and I didn't want to go out and get more, but I happened to still have some pork panko breadcrumbs, which is basically just ground up pork rinds. I got these back when I was doing keto a couple years ago, and I tried it for about 3 months before I just decided I couldn't keep doing it. It just wasn't sustainable long term. So I used some of those in place of part of the breadcrumbs, and oh my goodness, those meatballs came out amazing. Like, I've made them with exclusively pork panko before, rather than breadcrumbs when I was doing keto. They were good, but these ones, I did a combination. It was like about half of it was regular panko breadcrumbs, and the other half was pork panko. And it just like, oh man, it was so good. So yeah, if you are making your own homemade meatballs, you know, give it a shot. Do half of your breadcrumbs as the pork panko, if you can get some, or if you can just get some pork rinds and grind them up yourself, and then you have the same thing. So, but then my actual real recommendation for, at least for people who are adults, is a Amazon Prime original show, The Terminal List. Now, this is one that came out a couple years ago. It's Chris Pratt as the main actor for it. It's based off of a book of the same name. I've never read the book. I heard of this show back then, but I hadn't gotten around to watching it. We started watching it last week. I think a week or two ago. We started watching it, and it is really good. It's really fantastic. Now, I wouldn't say necessarily something that you need to subscribe to Amazon Prime for it, but if you already have Amazon Prime, you know, for shipping and everything else, which is the reason why we have it, then it's, you know, included as part of the service. And yeah, it's a pretty fantastic show. We're not quite done with the season. I don't think it's going to have more than one season, but I honestly don't know since I haven't finished it yet. I think we have 2 or 3 episodes left. I think it's just 2 episodes left. So we'll watch those on Friday. And yeah, but it's good. Good stuff. That's it for recommendations. Dissuasions?
My dissuasion. Don't use VBA. Oh gosh, what was the full name? VBA Advanced, or whatever it is. Let me make sure I get this right here because I actually messed this up before. It is. Okay, yeah. Don't you? Okay, actually, the full name is Don't Use Visual Boy Advance if you're trying to emulate Metroid Zero Mission. Reason why is because when you actually get to Torian and you're facing the Metroids, at least this is what my experience. The Metroids are sort of flickering, stuttering, and it's not that it's a distraction, but it looks like it's not something that's ruining the experience, but it just doesn't look right. It's definitely noticeable for someone who has played the game before and knows what to expect. So because of that, I would say don't use that version. Just use MGBA like most people do anyway. But just at the time I had to use VBA. But yeah, so don't use VBA, Visual Boy Advance, for Metroid Zero Mission. Other games so far have been good, but not that one.
Okay. Well, my dissuasion is actually related to Kingdom Hearts. And that is that if you are at all interested in the lore, as convoluted as it gets, do yourself a favor. As much as the art style is terrible, don't skip out on those additional story bits. The ones that, because it's like, those games are probably not worth playing. I would not even touch those games, those mobile games. I mean, especially because I hate the art style so much. But the lore is interesting. And as far as I know, it's actually really important to Kingdom Hearts 3. So, unless you just literally don't care and you just want to play the games, you don't care at all about the lore, you're not interested in seeing how the story resolves and all that, don't skip out on checking out the lore, and you can very easily find all the cutscenes on YouTube, and that's really what you need anyway. It's just the cutscenes. You could technically skip most of the games and just go straight to Kingdom Hearts 3, but honestly, the only real reason I would say to skip all of the games and go straight to Kingdom Hearts 3 is if you've previously played at least some of them. Because you are going to miss story bits, you're going to miss quite a bit, and the games overall are fantastic. They're worth playing. It's just some of them that are easier to, say, skip than others. And, but yeah. Though I will say, I've really been thinking, man, like I would love to go back and actually play Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, especially because I haven't played those since I played them on PS2, and especially like Kingdom Hearts 2, I really love that one. It's at this point it's still my favorite Kingdom Hearts game, even though Birth by Sleep is a close second. But I also don't want to go through all of that again because there's just too much. And if the games weren't if the games were shorter and didn't have, like the extra super bosses and whatnot, I probably wouldn't mind so much going back through them, but there's just too much. It's just too much across too many games, and I've played them, so I'm perfectly happy to skip most of them. I've now played basically everything that's playable, with the exception of like remakes and remasters, and the mobile games. I did skip Recoded, only because of the fact that one, from everything I could tell, just didn't really seem like it appealed to me all that much, and didn't seem like there was enough important stuff story-wise to where I was missing anything by not playing it, so I did skip that, but I played basically the rest of them. Of course, just finished 0.2. So yeah, once I finish getting through these cutscenes, even though some of them, this one's definitely taken a while to get through for Union Cross. When I'm done with all that, it won't be long before I start Kingdom Hearts 3, finally. But yeah, that's what I got. Alright. Where can people find you?
They can find me at my channel. I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. No new videos from me this past week. I will see, hopefully, if I can put one out this weekend. It'll just depend on some things, but we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, you can find me on YouTube at TheFrozenGamer87. I have not been putting out content for a bit. However, this coming week is going to be a return to form. Probably with a little bit of extra content, in that I'm going to start putting out the Dads and Gaming interviews. I do need to get some more recorded, but I just need to reach out to the people who had already agreed to do it and see what I can figure out with that. Hopefully it won't take as long. I haven't fully decided if there's going to be a weekly thing or if it's going to be bi-weekly or what it's going to be. It'll probably end up being, at least initially, more of a bi-weekly thing, just so that as I'm getting caught up again, go from there. But anyway, coming Monday on July 1st, the plan is to have the comparison for Steam Deck OLED versus Switch OLED for Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance. It is over an hour long worth of gameplay, but there's a lot in there. You get a great chance to see how they compare. The one thing that's kind of interesting is that most of the time, at least with any of the pre-rendered cutscenes, very easy to get them to match up, and then you can play, you can watch them. They're both going at exactly the same time, same speed and everything, even though technically Switch is only doing 30 versus the 60 frames that the Steam Deck is doing. Basically just smoother animations, but otherwise it's dead on. But anytime you have something that's in-engine, which there's only really like 1 or 2 spots I can think of, like it'll start off synced up, and then partway through, because the Switch's animations are a little more wooden or something, it loses that sync, and I couldn't keep it synced for that portion, which was a bit annoying. So that's kind of an annoyance. Like, I thought, okay, well, maybe I could try pausing it to get it back in sync, but then it's like I'm having to pause too often to where it's not even worth the effort at that point. But either way, that should be good. Of course, you can also find my YouTube cooking channel, Not Authentic But Delicious. That's at NABD Cooking. And that's also available on Twitter and Facebook. You can find that same channel. My next recipe that's going up may be my chili rellenos, but I'm not positive, mostly because I don't remember what I have recorded already. It's going to be something that I already have recorded for sure, because I don't think I'm going to be recording anything new. If it wasn't for the fact that we just had it, I would definitely record that Huevos Rancheros pizza that I made, because that came out so good. But unfortunately, it was just a situation where I didn't have the time to record it, and there was like a family situation going on at the time to where I was a little stressed out, and so I didn't want to add one more thing to my plate then. So anyway, probably it's going to be the chili relleno that's going to go up next. Potentially will end up being something else. I'm not entirely sure yet. It really just, I have to look over my footage again, because I know that there was some flaws with how it came out, and I may not be satisfied enough to let that be my final thing, but I don't remember what else I have recorded, so I don't know. Anyway, there will be something up, most likely on Monday. If not, it would be the following week, in which case it would probably end up being my pork loin pastrami. Or beef and pork loin pastrami. So, we'll see how that goes. Trying to think if there's anything else on that front. Of course, you can find our podcast both on... My brain's not working. If you're listening to the audio-only version, we are also up on YouTube. We have a video version that also goes up every Friday at 7 a.m. Central Time, with of course, the audio-only version, which is on all major podcast platforms, going up at midnight Central Time. And you can write to us either through Twitter, which is at the Orange Box Pod. You can write to us on Facebook, which there's not like a Facebook address, but you can find us, the Orange Box Podcast, on Facebook. Or you can email us, the orangeboxpodcast@gmail.com. Of course, for anyone listening out there, feel free to send us a message. I know we talk a long time, but we can shift around our discussion topics in order to accommodate questions easily enough. Most of the time, we just find what we can to talk about and then see where it takes us. So, either way, you should be able to reach us through any of those sources. And I think that's it for that. All right, so you have any final thoughts before we close out? Last chance.
No, sir. No, sir.
All right, well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I Am Zeracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And until next time, go listen to some video game music. Orange Box Podcast, out.